Thank you, Dennis. I wanted to first thank the mayor of the city of Helsinki and the organizer of the HundrED Education Summit for co-hosting this particular forum with the UNU-Wider on a very, very important sustainable development goal on quality education. I have a simple task. I'm going to speak to a very straightforward question, but a really important question. And the question is, does education lead to greater social mobility? But what is social mobility? Social mobility is a movement from a lower to higher level of education, occupational status, social class, or income of the child as compared to the parent. Social mobility is actually the hope of economic development, the mantra of a good society. All parents would like to see their children do better in life than perhaps where they were. But certainly low-income parents from low-income households certainly would want to see their children do better in life. That's a fact. We have been working in UNU-Wider on social mobility for the last few years. We have a book that came out earlier this year, which is open access, freely downloadable on our website. The book is titled Social Mobility in Developing Countries, Concepts, Methods, and Determinants, which has a lot more about what I'll be speaking about. First point that I think is important to understand that educational mobility, so in other words, how we see children do better than their parents in education, differs greatly across the developing world. And if you use a simple indicator, a measure of educational mobility, what we often say is intergenerational correlation in educational attainment. So think about two countries. In one country, parents mostly have been educated at the primary level, and children stay at the same level. In that country, the intergenerational correlation in educational attainment will be very high. In other words, hardly any social mobility. In another country, parents are also educated up to the primary level, but children are educated to higher level, at least secondary, maybe even university. In that country, the intergenerational correlation in educational attainment will be very low, higher social mobility. And as you see this graph in front of you, you can see striking variations in educational mobility. Especially in Latin America, we see very little educational mobility. Especially, so in this country, we tend to see children doing no better than the parents in educational attainment. And then you see many other countries on the right side of the graph. China is an example where we see more social mobility into educational attainment. So this itself is very interesting and something that we need to think about. Why do we see, even in education where we already heard the keynote speaker say there's been a lot more expansion in educational attainment, we see very much significant variation in educational mobility. So the question that I'm going to answer, does education make a difference in social mobility? Education is a powerful driver of social mobility. More educated children have higher chance of moving up in terms of occupation, income ladder, compared to the parents, as compared to less educated children. That's a fact. The evidence on this is very, very strong. And the work we've done and others too show this very clearly. So that's stylized fact number one. But stylized fact number two is that poorer parents are less likely to invest in the children's education simply because they don't have the money. And what that implies is that poorer households in any society, including developed country societies, will see higher inequality if poorer parents cannot invest in children's education. So that's under the second side as fact. Now, what can try to weaken this link between income and social mobility is if you have good quality primary and secondary schooling for children from low-income households. That's something that should be fairly obvious. So that's essential for promoting social mobility. If you don't have good quality education for low-income children, we're not going to see social mobility in that country. But there is something else that we should be keeping in mind when we discuss education and social mobility. Education is not enough. You can have a lot of children who are getting educated, but what if there are no jobs waiting for them, which are well-paid jobs? What happens to them? And that's a real challenge, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where youth unemployment is extremely high, one of the highest in the world. So the point really is that while we do think education is important for social mobility, we should also keep in mind that at the same time there should be jobs, better jobs waiting for them when they come into the workforce. And therefore, the question that I wanted to answer, education, does it cause social mobility? Yes, but. There is a very important but here. The but here is that at the same time, as we try and improve education systems, we also need to make sure there are enough jobs waiting for the children who are getting educated over time and entering the labor market. Thank you.